Have you ever noticed how some people only show up to take, not to give? How their words sound sweet, but something in your gut tells you, this isn't right? Stoic philosophy teaches us one brutal truth. Not everyone deserves your trust. And the more you ignore that, the more damage they do. In this video, we expose 9 types of people who drain your energy, disrespect your peace, and disguise harm as help. These aren't just bad habits, they're warning signs. And the sooner you spot them, the faster you reclaim your strength. If you're ready to live with more clarity, self-respect, and unshakable peace, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every day we drop Stoic insights to help you protect your mind, sharpen your spirit, and walk through life untouchable. Let's begin.
Number 1.
The manipulative individual. There's a dangerous kind of person who doesn't scream or shout to control you. They smile. They use kindness not as generosity, but as a currency to buy your obedience. These are the manipulators. At first, they seem helpful, generous, even protective. But underneath, their compliments are hooks, their favors are traps, and their presence slowly chips away at your sense of clarity. You'll find yourself doing things to keep the peace, to avoid disappointing them, to meet invisible expectations you never agreed to in the first place. The Stoics warned against this kind of entrapment. Epictetus taught freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. A manipulator's power lies exactly in that, in convincing you to give up control of your own will. But the Stoic does not bend to emotional puppeteers. He observes, reflects, and protects his autonomy. To be manipulated is to live unconsciously. To break free is to awaken to what is truly yours. Your reason, your consent, your center. Consider the life of Marcus Aurelius. As emperor, he was surrounded by flatterers and politicians who constantly angled for power and influence. But he made it a habit in his meditations to remind himself, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors. It is not in their power to direct your steps. In other words, Marcus trained himself to spot the subtle influence games so he could rise above them, not react to them. The manipulators in your life may not wear crowns or rule empires. They might be the partner who guilt trips you into sacrificing your goals, the friend who only helps when they can remind you of the debt, the boss who praises you only to extract more than your role requires. Stoicism demands we see through this. We don't respond with hate or confrontation, but with firm clarity. You recognize the pattern, you stop explaining yourself, and you silently withdraw your trust. Walking away doesn't make you cold. It makes you whole, because trust is sacred. It is not given to those who twist it into leverage. The Stoics would remind you, the only thing truly yours is your character, your mind, your choices. The moment someone begins to erode that, no matter how softly, you must protect it like a soldier guards a flame in the storm. So when you feel that subtle pull, the sense that you're being steered, not supported, pause. Ask yourself, is this kindness or is this control? Then respond, not with emotion, but with wisdom. A manipulator wants you reactive, but the Stoic, he stays anchored, silent, and strong. He chooses deliberate withdrawal over dramatic reaction. And by doing so, he sends a message without saying a word. You do not own my peace. Modern life is full of invisible puppeteers, corporate scripts, digital flattery, even well-meaning family who nudge through guilt. But the Stoic sees the strings, and the moment you see the strings, you stop dancing. You stand still, and you choose peace over performance.
Number 2.
The Perpetual Critic. Some people don't need a reason to criticize you. They just need an audience. The Perpetual Critic is the one who always finds a flaw, a weakness, a failure to point out. No matter how much effort or progress you've made, their default setting is disapproval, cloaked under the guise of just being honest or keeping it real. But the truth without compassion is cruelty dressed as wisdom. And these critics don't uplift, they diminish. Over time, if you let them, their voice becomes internalized. You begin to mistrust your own progress. You hesitate to try. You fear being seen. The Stoics taught us to be immune to this kind of noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." The critic's words are not chains unless you choose to wear them. That's the first lesson. You are not bound by someone else's opinion, only your own response to it. But it goes deeper. Why do some people always tear others down? Because it's easier to criticize than to create. It takes no courage to sit on the sidelines and throw stones at someone who's building something meaningful. The Stoics knew this. They believed in action, not empty rhetoric. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, progress demands vulnerability, and the critic despises what he cannot do himself, so he mocks it. Take the example of Theodore Roosevelt. Not a Stoic philosopher, but a man deeply influenced by Stoic ideas. In his famous Man in the Arena speech, he said, "It is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena." Roosevelt understood what the Stoics taught, that living boldly invites criticism, but it is better to stumble in the pursuit of excellence than to rot in the safety of judgment. So what does the Stoic do with criticism? He listens, but not to everyone. He weighs the words. He checks for wisdom. He asks, is this a judgment meant to sharpen me or just to wound me? And if it's the latter, he lets it fall like rain on armor. No anger, no defense, just quiet discernment. To protect your peace, you must develop this inner filter. Not every voice deserves to enter your mind. Not every comment deserves your energy. And certainly not every critic deserves your respect. True growth comes from feedback, not ridicule. And the Stoic always knows the difference. In modern life, the critics are everywhere. Online trolls, passive-aggressive co-workers, even people in your own family. But the Stoic does not retreat from their noise. He rises above it. Because at the end of the day, it's not the critic who defines your path. It's your choices, your endurance, your willingness to stay in the arena while others watch from the stands, wishing they had your courage. And that courage, that's what the Stoic builds in silence.
Number 3.
The Gossip Monger. Gossip is the coward's weapon. It avoids confrontation and accountability, but still aims to destroy. The gossip monger doesn't come at you directly. Instead, they pick apart your name behind your back, using secrets as currency and slander as entertainment. They pretend to bond with you over the flaws of others, but it's a trap. Because if they talk that freely about someone else to you, you can be sure, they talk just as easily about you to others. The Stoics were crystal clear about this. Marcus Aurelius warned, don't waste what's left of your life in guessing what others are doing and thinking. To dwell on others' private lives is not only unproductive, it's corrosive. Gossip breeds judgment, and judgment weakens compassion. A Stoic mind is not a sponge for drama, but a sanctuary for discipline. But gossip is seductive. It makes people feel powerful, included, even righteous. That's why so many fall into its grip. Yet as Epictetus reminds us, only the educated are free. Free from the need to belong to small-minded circles, free from the insecurity that feeds off the humiliation of others. Freedom, in the Stoic sense, means rising above the petty satisfaction of tearing others down. Look to Cato the Younger, a statesman of incorruptible Stoic resolve. He was known not only for his virtue, but for his refusal to engage in the whispers of Roman politics. When others spread rumors and schemed behind closed doors, Cato stood silent, never using the tongue as a blade. His silence was power. His refusal to gossip was a form of resistance against both dishonor and the loss of inner clarity. So what should you do when surrounded by gossip? First, resist the urge to participate. Even nodding in agreement gives poison a place to grow. Second, redirect the conversation. Ask about ideas, not people. Finally, set boundaries. If someone continually uses you as their dumping ground for drama, walk away. Peace has a price, and often that price is distance. It's easy to dismiss gossip as harmless, but it slowly alters your lens. You begin to expect the worst in others. You lose trust. You speak more, but connect less. And the Stoic understands. Anything that pollutes your perception is a threat to your reason. And reason is sacred. Seneca once wrote, "He who indulges in empty gossip betrays both himself and others." So guard your ears, guard your mouth, guard your mind. Because your attention is your power, and when you give it to poison, even passively, you become a part of its spread. In modern society, gossip has been industrialized. Reality shows, tabloid headlines, viral scandals, they all prey on our lower instincts. But a Stoic trains the mind not to follow the noise, but to return to stillness. He replaces curiosity about others' flaws with curiosity about his own growth. He builds relationships on respect, not ridicule. In the end, gossip is a game of shadows. And the Stoic? He walks in light, with truth, with restraint, with honor.
Number 4.
The fair weather friend. You've seen them, the ones who cheer when you rise but vanish when you fall. When everything's going well, success, celebration, attention, they're right beside you, smiling wide, basking in your light. But the moment things get difficult, they grow distant. Calls stop, support disappears, excuses multiply. These are the fair weather friends. They love your victories, but not your valleys. The Stoics remind us, true friendship is tested in adversity. Seneca wrote, "You must hold your friend dear, but not as something irreplaceable." In other words, value your connections, but be prepared to stand alone. Stoic friendship is not based on utility or convenience, but on shared virtue and resilience. The one who flees during your struggle was never truly with you. It's important to understand why fair weather friends act the way they do. It's not always malice. Sometimes it's fear. Your pain reminds them of their own. Your hardship reveals their discomfort with emotional depth. But whatever the reason, the result is the same: abandonment when you need them most. And in that silence, you learn something powerful. You learn who's real. Take the life of Roman general and Stoic Gaius Musonius Rufus. During times of political exile and hardship, he was stripped of his position, isolated and abandoned by many former allies. But he continued to teach philosophy in exile, knowing that character was not defined by applause or popularity, but by persistence through suffering. His dignity remained untouched because he never attached it to anyone else's loyalty. That's the Stoic way. When support disappears, the true Stoic doesn't collapse. He reflects, he adjusts, and then he continues forward, wiser than before. Fair weather friends reveal more than betrayal. They reveal how much of your self-worth depended on external validation. And that revelation, though painful, is freeing. So what should you do with such people? You don't need to rage, accuse, or beg. You simply recalibrate. You accept that not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. You learn to enjoy good company without leaning on it. You welcome love, but no longer need it to stay afloat. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means becoming whole, so that your peace is not at the mercy of someone else's presence. The Stoic is not cold, but he is complete. He can walk alone, not because he rejects others, but because he has found stability within himself. In today's world, many relationships are transactional. Social media followers, party invites, fleeting connections based on image rather than substance. But Stoicism calls us back to something deeper. Loyalty forged in trials, not convenience. Ask yourself, who shows up when the lights go out? That's your tribe. The rest are just shadows passing through. Life will always shift. Circumstances change. People come and go. But your character, your inner fortress, must remain. So when someone shows you they only love the sunshine, thank them for revealing their limits. And then walk on, because storms are not the enemy. They're the filter that reveals who is truly walking beside you.
Number 5.
The narcissist one, at first they're magnetic, charismatic, even intoxicating. They know exactly what to say to make you feel special, chosen. But as time passes, the pattern emerges. Every conversation circles back to them. Every compliment is transactional, and your needs slowly fade into the background. This is the narcissist, not just someone confident, but someone consumed by the need to be admired, obeyed, and praised at all costs. The Stoics understood this hunger for attention as a kind of sickness of the soul. Epictetus warned, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." A narcissist, no matter how successful or adored, remains internally impoverished. They depend on your validation to survive. But the Stoic does not play that game. He offers respect, but not reverence. Kindness, but not submission. In Roman history, no example stands clearer than Emperor Nero. Despite his immense power, wealth, and public adoration, he was driven by insecurity and a desperate thirst for admiration. His paranoia led him to betray friends, execute mentors like Seneca, and destroy anyone who questioned his grandeur. The tragedy wasn't just his cruelty, it was how empty he remained, no matter how much he took. This is the danger of the narcissist. They don't just want love, they want to control the narrative. Your joy must orbit their approval. Your success must serve their image. Your silence becomes a stage for their voice. And the more you give, the less of yourself remains. So what does the Stoic do? He detaches not with bitterness, but with clarity. He stops feeding the black hole of ego. He refuses to shrink so someone else can feel larger. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." And when the subject is your worth, only you and nature get a vote. Detachment is not rejection, it's protection. It's the act of stepping back, not to punish, but to preserve your mind. Narcissists thrive on emotional entanglement. The Stoic breaks the loop. He walks away without the need to explain, defend, or retaliate. Silence becomes a shield. In today's world, narcissism isn't rare, it's rewarded. In influencers, in corporations, in relationships that look perfect on the surface but hollow underneath. But the Stoic sees beneath the charm. He notices the pattern. He trusts the discomfort. And most importantly, he trusts himself. You don't owe eternal applause to anyone, especially not those who would erase you to stay in the spotlight. Remember this, admiration is not loyalty, and obedience is not love. The Stoic knows the difference, and because of that, he walks free. And perhaps most critically, he does not carry resentment. The Stoic releases both the narcissist and the need to be understood by them. He doesn't seek closure from someone incapable of empathy. He gives it to himself. Because real peace isn't granted, it's claimed. True power is walking away with your spirit intact and your dignity untouched. Number 6, the flatterer. At first it feels good. Who doesn't like to be praised? The flatterer knows this. They study your ego, your insecurities, your hunger to be seen, and then they feed it. But their praise isn't sincere, it's strategic. Their compliments aren't gifts. They're currency exchanged for trust, influence, or advantage. The flatterer doesn't admire you. They calculate you. The Stoics were clear about this kind of manipulation. Seneca warned, "It is more noble to give yourself to truth than to seek approval." When someone constantly praises without depth, without honest feedback or thoughtful concern, it's not loyalty, it's leverage. The Stoic must be vigilant. Praise, when it comes from the wrong mouth, is just another form of deceit. There's a sharp difference between affirmation and flattery. Affirmation strengthens. It uplifts with truth. But flattery weakens. It softens your perception, dulls your reason, and makes you susceptible to influence. Epictetus taught, when someone flatters you, remember that they are not praising you. They are trying to own you. Tucker, history gives us a clear example in Julius Caesar. As his power grew, so did the chorus of praise around him. Flatterers surrounded him, fueling his pride and blinding him to the real dangers rising beneath the surface. Even his friend Brutus, once loyal, became part of the betrayal. Why? Because Caesar believed in admiration more than he believed in discernment. And in the end, it cost him everything. The Stoic, by contrast, keeps a balanced ear. He does not reject praise, but he examines it. He asks, what purpose does this serve? And who benefits from me believing this? He is cautious with praise just as he is with criticism. Both can distort if not received through the lens of reason. When you rely on flattery, you lose the ability to see yourself clearly. You become dependent on other people's applause to feel worthy. But the Stoic cultivates something deeper, internal validation. He seeks alignment with virtue, not popularity. He doesn't need to be told he is great. He needs only to know he is growing. So when someone showers you with praise too easily, pause. Ask yourself, what is this praise protecting me from seeing? Because sometimes flattery is a smokescreen, meant to blind you from betrayal or convince you to surrender your boundaries. In today's world where likes, followers, and digital praise are traded like currency, the Stoic stands still. He doesn't chase applause. He doesn't fear obscurity. His compass is virtue, not volume. He accepts real admiration, but never lets it define him. The Stoic walks a narrow path, one where truth matters more than comfort, where clarity is prized above praise, because the one who flatters you today may control you tomorrow. And the Stoic? He would rather walk alone in truth than be escorted in comfort by deception. And perhaps that is the greatest power of all, not needing praise to know who you are. For once you are no longer seduced by false admiration, you become untouchable. Number 7, the envious. They smile when you fail. They flinch when you rise. The envious person may never attack you directly, but their resentment runs deep. It shows in the way they minimize your success, compare your path to theirs, and celebrate your setbacks quietly. You can feel it, the tight-lipped congratulations, the backhanded compliments, the silence when you expected support. Envy is not always loud. Often it's disguised as politeness. According to the Stoics, envy is a distortion of perspective. It's the refusal to accept fate and the poison of constant comparison. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't set your mind on things you don't possess. Instead, count the blessings you actually possess and think how much you would crave them if they weren't yours." Shorta. Envy arises when someone fixates on what they lack rather than being grateful for what they have. And the Stoic path is the opposite of this. It is the art of sufficiency. The envious person suffers, but not in your presence, in their own mind. They are tormented not by your actions, but by the mirror your life holds up to their dissatisfaction. Their bitterness reveals more about their emptiness than your excess. That's why the Stoic doesn't argue with envy. He doesn't try to prove his worth to the bitter. He simply lives unshaken and unbothered. Consider the story of Epictetus, who was born a slave and walked a life of difficulty. Yet he was known for his joy, his discipline, and his profound inner wealth. He never chased external validation, and by doing so left nothing for envy to grasp. Even when he gained a following, he warned his students not to become proud of praise or fearful of rejection. The wise man, he taught, doesn't live to impress others. He lives to align with nature and virtue. So how should we handle the envious? First, recognize the signs. Pay attention to who claps when you win and who goes silent. Second, don't dim your light to keep others comfortable. Your success isn't arrogance. It's earned. And finally, protect your energy. Envy is a fire. Don't feed it with explanations or apologies. In the modern world where everything is visible and comparison is constant, envy spreads like a virus. Social media, career updates, curated lives. They all feed the illusion that someone else's success diminishes your own. But the Stoic knows better. He sees success not as a race, but as a responsibility. And envy? that's a distraction from your own path, the Stoic remains grounded. He celebrates others sincerely, not because he wants something in return, but because he is whole. And that wholeness, the absence of envy, is the quiet foundation of peace. Because at the end of the day, you don't need everyone to celebrate you. You need the strength to keep rising even when they don't. And if you must walk alone through the silence of others, do so proudly, because your growth does not require their permission. The applause of the crowd fades, but the integrity of your path remains eternal. The finalized version of Section 8 is now complete at 514 words. Just slightly over your ideal max, but tightly written, emotionally rich, and philosophically robust. Let me know if you'd like a hard trim to 510, but here's the version as it stands. Number 8. The victim. Some people wear suffering like a crown, not to heal from it, but to control with it. They speak of pain, not to connect, but to manipulate. They've built their identity around being wronged, mistreated, or misunderstood. Every conversation circles back to how life has been unfair to them. And while their stories may be rooted in real wounds, they use those wounds as weapons to excuse poor behavior, demand endless sympathy, or deflect responsibility. Stoic philosophy makes a clear distinction between what happens to us and how we interpret it. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The victim mindset violates this truth. It places power in external circumstances and makes peace something perpetually out of reach, because it depends on everyone else changing instead of the self rising. But make no mistake, this isn't about denying pain. The Stoics never dismiss suffering. Marcus Aurelius lost children, faced betrayal, endured plague, and carried the weight of empire. And yet in the midst of it all, he wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." That is the Stoic creed. Pain is inevitable, but victimhood is optional. The perpetual victim resists this. They trade responsibility for attention. Growth threatens them because it would mean letting go of their helpless narrative. And so they remain stuck, not because they lack strength, but because they refuse to claim it. This isn't weakness, it's control through passivity. It's influence through suffering. Consider Nelson Mandela, not a Stoic philosopher, but a living embodiment of Stoic resilience. After 27 years of unjust imprisonment, he emerged not with bitterness, but clarity. He did not use his pain as a weapon. He used it as a foundation. A victim remains chained by the past. A Stoic like Mandela uses that past to build something freer, wiser, and stronger. So what does the Stoic do when confronted with a perpetual victim? He offers compassion, but with boundaries. He listens but does not enable. He encourages responsibility, not dependence. And most of all, he protects his own emotional space. Because negativity, when constantly absorbed, becomes a silent toxin. In today's world, victimhood is often rewarded. Outrage, blame, and moral superiority become social currency. But the Stoic doesn't seek sympathy, he seeks sovereignty. He knows that true healing requires effort, ownership, and the uncomfortable work of moving forward. The victim says, "Life happened to me." The Stoic says, "I happened to life." And that difference, subtle but profound, is the distance between despair and dignity. Because in the end, your pain may explain you, but it must never define you. The Stoic feels deeply, but he chooses to rise not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. He walks through fire, not to prove a point, but to prove to himself that peace is still possible. He refuses to be owned by what hurt him. He reclaims his story by living well and never surrendering his power. Because in the Stoic worldview, suffering is not the end. It's the beginning of strength if you let it be. Here is the complete and final version of Section 9, written with emotional depth, grounded Stoic philosophy, and retention-optimized flow. Total word count 495, perfectly within range for your standards. Number 9, the judgmental. They see the world in black and white, right or wrong, worthy or worthless. The judgmental person doesn't seek to understand. They seek to label. Quick to condemn, slow to reflect. They base their sense of superiority on tearing others down. But behind that sharp critique often hides a fragile ego. Their judgments aren't rooted in truth. They're rooted in fear. The Stoics warned against this impulse. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize?" The wise man doesn't rush to judgment because he knows how complex human nature is. The judgmental mind, on the other hand, simplifies reality to protect its own sense of control. To judge is easy, to understand is harder, and that's why so many choose judgment. It requires no empathy, no humility, no effort. But the Stoic is called to a higher discipline. He doesn't look at someone's surface and declare a verdict. He examines his own reaction first. As Epictetus taught, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. The goal is not moral superiority, it's moral clarity. Take the example of Socrates, the philosophical grandfather of Stoicism. He was famously slow to speak and quick to ask questions. He didn't posture as someone above others. He placed himself alongside them. And in doing so, he revealed deeper truths, not just about others, but about himself. That's the Stoic path, not to judge from above, but to understand from within. The judgmental person struggles with this. They rely on external standards to affirm their worth. They must see others as flawed so they can feel flawless. But it's a hollow kind of power, loud but brittle, and it often isolates them from the very connection they crave. So what does the Stoic do when confronted with judgmental energy? He doesn't mirror it. He doesn't try to out-argue or out-condemn. He responds with presence, not performance. He may offer insight, but never from a place of superiority. And when necessary, he walks away. Because some people don't want understanding. They want dominance. In modern times, judgment is often disguised as virtue. Performative outrage, constant criticism, endless call-outs. But the Stoic sees through the noise. He knows that loud isn't wise and harsh doesn't mean honest. He speaks when it adds value and stays silent when it doesn't. Because in the end, the Stoic doesn't need to prove he's better. He just needs to stay aligned. Judgment divides. Wisdom unites. And the wisest people are often the slowest to speak. Not because they don't see, but because they understand too much to condemn too fast. And that is the final discipline. To see the flaws of others not as targets, but as mirrors. To judge less and grow more. To let silence become your sanctuary, where empathy lives and wisdom begins. Some people do not deserve your trust. And recognizing that is not cruelty, it's clarity. The Stoics taught us to protect our peace, not through aggression, but through alignment. Let others reveal themselves. Let their actions speak louder than their words. And when they do, respond not with hate, but with distance. Not with noise, but with strength. Because the one who walks away in silence often walks away with power. If this message resonates with you, subscribe for more daily Stoic wisdom. And share this with someone who needs a reminder that self-respect is the highest form of discipline.